Hello, Doko here. In my last video, I showed you this particular example of loan application processing, where I have a directory of PDFs. I put 100 PDFs in there, and I loop through the PDFs. I read the contents of the PDF. I then enter that data into the application form, submit. I get the status if it was approved or rejected based on the details of the PDF. I then send an email. I add the content of the summary to a data table. I move the PDF to a process folder, and then I click on the apply another button, and then it goes back up to the top here, gets the next PDF, and continues the cycle until it completes all the PDF. In that example, I created 100 PDFs, and they were in there, so to process 100 PDFs. At the end, it would save a summary file to an Excel. It would then email that as an attachment to the management. So that was what was covered. And if we run this, it looks like the following. So it'll just process the PDFs one by one. So if you were sitting at your machine, you would see what you're seeing here on the screen. So what we want to do here is, this is all good and well, but we want to see a status here. So what we're going to do in this video is run the same application, but have a status form here to show you what is actually going on, how many PDFs we've processed, what PDF we're currently processing, etc., rather than just looking at this bot running and then not sure how long to go, how many we've processed, how long it's taken, etc. So I'm going to put a status screen here. So a better way of doing this would be to have a status bar, as you see over here. So what we're going to do in this video is show you how to create this status bar for attended automation. So you can see up here I've displayed some messages here saying the current PDF we're processing, how many of the 100 PDFs we're currently up to. So at the moment we're up to number 10, and how long we've taken so far. So we've taken 44 seconds. So in order to do this, what we need to do is we go over to Studio, we open our project, and we come up here and we add a form. So this will be our status form. So we open that, create a new form, and we'll just call it status. Keep it simple, and create. Now you can see it just creates an empty form. And over here you can see it will have a components tab, and we can drag and drop components to it. So all we want to do is display some information. So to display information, all we'll need is some labels. So we can drag and drop some labels over here, and we can call them various names. So for example, in this one we might just have, I don't know, we'll just call the first one status. And the field key will be similar, we'll call it status. We save that. So we have one field here, we might want to drag a second field across, and we can call that email. And the field key, call that email. Okay, etc. We can add two more, as you saw in my example just now. So I won't waste your time with that. Now this submit button, we're not actually going to use the submit button, so we can just delete this. So we don't need any submit button there. You can see over here, if we look at the properties of the form, we have a width and a height at the moment. This is set to nothing. We might just put a particular width and height here. We'll just put 400 and 600. The default theme, and you can see that you can set some custom CSS here. At the moment this form is just white, so if we wanted to change the color, we could put some custom CSS in here. So I'm not going to go into details about the CSS, but I'll just paste some in here. You can look that up yourself. So if I paste in this CSS is basically saying the body, the color of the text here is white, and the background color, I've selected an RGB of 250, 70, 22. So these numbers correspond to the UiPath colors. Now if you want to know how to get the correct colors here for example, for UiPath or any other theme you wanted to have, an easy way of doing that is to go over to Paint. What I've done here in Paint is I've just downloaded the UiPath logo, and if you come over here, get the eyedropper and just select the color you want, and then you come over to Edit Colors. You can see the values, the RGBs over here for whatever color you want to find, and then you can use those colors and put them over here to get the correct color matching your theme. So for example, if I change that to 200, you can see, or 20, you can see it becomes green, for example. So that's just a tip on getting the correct colors for your form. Now I've finished setting up this form, and I've got 4 fields here, which are 4 labels: the status window, the timer, the email, and a status here. So if you look at the settings on each one, you can see I've got a field key here, status window. So when I pass in values to this form, I need to use this property name here. And similar on this one here, I've got timer, and the property name is timer, so I've got to use these properties. Email, the field key is email, and this status one, the field key is status. To use forms, we would need to include the UiPath form activities. So that has to be included in your project. And then the first thing we want to do, we've created our form over here, and we want to display the form. So we want to display the form at the start of the process. So in order to do that, we go over to Activities, and there is an activity called Show Form, and we just drag and drop our Show Form over here. We select the form. If we had multiple forms, in this case we do have multiple forms, we'll just use this particular one. And then it's got 4 parameters, the ones we defined previously, and we need to pass in values. So initially we've got the status, we've got the timer, email, and the status at the bottom. So all we want to do at the start is just say something like let's go, just to indicate that we haven't really done anything. We don't need to pass anything in here, and that would be displaying our form. So if we run it, it would just display the form, but obviously we need to update the values as we're running through our process. If we have a look at our properties of the show form over here, we can see we can set various properties. We can set a title, we can set whether we want it to always stay on top, whether we want to show it in the taskbar, what position, the width and the height. So I've set up these particular values. I've set the title, window state is normal, you can have it maximized or minimized, and that it always stays on top, etc., and the width and the height. An instance name, we need this if we had multiple instances we want to keep track. In this case we just have one instance, so this doesn't really matter. What we then need to do is we then need to update the values on that form. So in order to do that, there is an activity called set form values. So we've displayed our form. Now we need to update the values in the form as we loop through. So we want to make sure that we have the appropriate data. So if we go down here, we've got the status, we get the values, read the values, and get the status. So since we're displaying the status in our form, we want to display the values after we've gotten the status. So there's an activity called set form values. So if we add a set form values, and before we make this decision here, we remove this, we can link this here to the set form values, link this over here to set form values, and then make the decision after we've displayed that. So we put an extra step in here. So at this point we have all the values we need to display. If we click that, we select the form. So let's say this is our form, and we have 4 values, and we just fill in the appropriate values here, what we want to display. I'll put a timer in here. This is just a timer that we can keep track of from the time it started to the time it's currently at, how long is the time span, and the email and the status. So I'll fill these out and I'll show you, and then we'll run it. So I've filled out these values. If we have a look, we can see the first value, we'll just say processing the file. It will then just tell us which file we're processing. Put a space in there, make it a bit neater. The email, it will just say email, the date, time. So the timer, what I've done, I just set a start time, which was the time this started, and I'm just subtracting the time now from the start time, get the minutes, and do the same with the seconds, subtract it from the time we started running, which is just a date time now at the start time, and then get the seconds, and that will just update as we're going through. And then the status, I've just said whether it was approved or not. So it'll say status is approved or rejected, which is just the string status as we go through the loop. And then the final thing we want to do is, once we've completed the 100, if we've looped around and we've finished, there's no more PDFs, we want to just do a final display of the set form values, which will just be a summary, just saying what happened. So for example, we could just say we finished processing and then how many files we processed. We could say the status is complete, and we could display the total amount of time it took to display. And then because the process finished, the form will disappear. So we will create our summary, we'll send out, and then we'll just put a delay. This delay, I just put in a 5-second delay. So this delay just keeps the form on the screen for 5 seconds or whatever amount of time before the process finishes. So if we run this, we can see our status is showing here as we're processing our application. So we can see, so if you were using this, you could have an idea of, there are 69 files and we're on the 4th file, so you'd have an idea of what is actually happening, or if this was running in the background, if this wasn't on the screen, or if this was in picture-in-picture, you could have your status here and this could be running, so you wouldn't need to be visually seeing this. This could be running in the background, and then you just see your status and you know it's complete or not. Now you could of course use a template. There's one called Attended Automation Framework. The reason I haven't used that in this particular example is because I don't really need all of this. This has triggers in it and I'm not using any triggers, and also it has a form at the start where you can do a setup and a configuration. So obviously you could start with using this Attended Automation Framework rather than just setting the values as I've done. The other reason I didn't use this is a VB framework, and my code, the code I've written is a C# code. So in order to include my C# project inside this VB framework, I'd either have to convert the framework to C# or convert my project to C#. So it wasn't worth the effort, since I just needed to display some values in my screen. So just to make you aware that this Attended Automation Framework is available and quite useful. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you on the next one. Farewell.